my big question with New Orleans. Should Brandon Ingram, if you're them, if you're trying to upgrade your roster, make some changes, figure out where to go after the way this season ended, which I think kind of gave you in some ways an incomplete of kind of understanding where you are and what was going on because Zion gets hurt and it kind of zapped all the momentum you had. Should Brandon Ingram, considering what the data you have and what you know your roster is and the desire to get better, should Brandon Ingram be off limits if you're trying to improve this roster?
No. Brandon Ingram's gone. He's not off limits. He's out of there. They benched him in the play-in game. He played like crap in the playoffs. He's gone. It's not even a question of off limits. He is the thing that they're wanting to upgrade on, change, and figure out on the roster. David Griffin this week said, I think in the past we've always erred on the side of continuity, and our takeaway has always been, let's see this group healthy. Now I think we've seen this group enough. We had a really good opportunity to see Zion play career high in games. We saw it for segments well enough to understand that we've got a lot of work to do. We'll take a lot of time to go through evaluations, but I want to be really, really clear. This is not going to be a summer of complacency. It's time to get better. Ingram's gone to me, and if they can find something for McCollum, I think he very well could be gone as well. They need a real playmaker on this team, Chris, and they need a better number two for this could be the same player. They need a better number two. Now that they know what Zion can look like, I think to not have to put so much on him. You can never be guaranteed that he won't get hurt, even if you concoct a world where his usage is lower and he could pull a hamstring again in the play-in game, and who knows. But you got to manage him a little bit better in that when he is out there, not needing to be the best defender, the best scorer, the best passer on your team all at one time. Ingram was not a good enough partner to him. They don't always fit together great in terms of how they play. And that's the obvious place you have to look. He's also heading into the final year of his contract, and I don't think they're going to re-sign him. So they'd almost be silly not to explore a trade given that, let alone the rest of it.
He's just the fit with Zion, I think, I agree with you. I guess I thought I was being edgier than I was just because he has a name. The funny thing is, it's like, I think there's like trades you can make with teams where you could go and get like a creator back from that team in exchange from Ingram, but I also would kind of want Ingram paired with a better creator. Like, I want both Zion and Brandon Ingram for the next step of their careers paired with someone who can like structure an offense and do stuff to acquiesce to them a little bit. But like the trade that I think, like if you did like a Garland Ingram swap, I kind of just would want Garland next to Ingram is like kind of the problem. Like you know what I mean? Like if I'm Cleveland, I kind of want that kind of guard next to Ingram to make him better, which is kind of the tricky part of like finding the right deal that makes both sides, I think, happy. But I agree with you. I think he, at the salary number, the extension, I think him and McCollum, if I'm them, I think it's kind of the summer to throw some of the picks you have out there. Trust in Herb, trust in Trey Murphy, and go find your upgrades. I'm curious to see also what they do, because for the longest time, Brendon, like one of the things we've heard them wanting is a center. Like they've wanted to upgrade on Valanciunas.
Who's expiring.
And I get that. I understand that impulse. But that's not my number one. My number one would be to go get, to your point, like a creator, like a better league creator that can like be a point guard, so your point guard isn't Zion at times or isn't Herb Jones at times. Like it isn't this like weird amalgamation of the guys you have on your roster. Go get me someone a little more traditional that allows you to be more intentional with your weirdness and then weaponize your weirdness in a more structured way. A center would not be super high on my list. If you could get one at the right cost, sure. But like would upgrading, like would if you're them, I'd rather go spend my chips on like a better guard than I would Jared Allen or Brook Lopez. Like I want the guard, I want the creator much more than I want the big, even if I understand the impulse to want the big.
Well, you can get the big for cheaper, right? So I think they might be able to do both, even if it's not all in a trade. Like their salary sheet's a little tough. I believe that they'll at least have the mid-level open. I think there's going to be a bidding war for Isaiah Hartenstein, so I'm not positive.
Yeah, that guy's good. Would Nick Claxton do anything for you?
Yeah, Nick Claxton would be a great fit there. I'm really curious what his salary is going to be, to be honest with you. What about, so thinking of Ingram fits, it's going to have to be a team that can bet that they can get him to play differently, because I think that he is one of these guys that has had a difficult time, and we talked about this a lot in real time with the FIBA tournament, has had a difficult time coming to terms with the fact that he's not going to be Duke Ingram on a good team. So whoever's taking him in is probably like he's already in his prime, right? Like you're not betting on upside. You're betting on adjustment, I think, with him. And like, is he just this generation's DeMar DeRozan? Or can he buy in somewhere?
6'8"
What, DeMar
DeRozan
DeRozan?
is like 6'8" DeMar DeRozan, 7'3" wingspan DeMar DeRozan.
Yeah. So I just think I'm not sure who's betting on that, and I guess we'll hear some rumors once this stuff really gets kicked up. Like, I wouldn't hate him on Sacramento or Memphis are two teams that come to mind, but they don't really have a lot of goods. Do the Spurs feel like, hey, let's just try it? Even then, what are you really getting? So it's an interesting kind of crossroads if New Orleans wants to do this.
If the Kings weren't, I love they would need like a third team who's like giving, like they would need a third team to give the Pelicans, like this is where it gets hard and why trades are hard. They need a third team to give the Pelicans need a third team to give picks to, who will give them the creator and is willing to take a step back in their own process, whereas the Kings can just like also send picks out and like Harrison Barnes' salary or some stuff and. Like Ingram, like it would be like a very convoluted kind of thing. They need a team who has what they want to be like, yeah, we'll get worse. Like we're at that point where we need to pivot. Like maybe Cleveland blows up and like that works that way, but like that would be really drastic in some ways. Like that would be even beyond like I think the scope of what I'm thinking of when I think of blow up there. And there's not a lot of those guys the list of guys that I think would make sense for them. I haven't we haven't done like the full list of like targets, and maybe we'll get to that in the summer. But it's like okay, the gut. You tell me if this is true or not. My gut tells me that I don't know if that list is that big. If the list is like a robust list to pick from.
My list is just players who I think could be available who would fit well. I'm not going to pretend to like have a ranking of every possible trade target and the most likely partners in the deal. Like I'm not, but I think that Kings concept. Harrison Barnes is a solid kind of guy to get back. So like that as a starting point, I don't hate, but I agree it would probably need a third team. I think DeJounte Murray as a guard, I think could make some sense there because they have Herb and Trey and Dyson Daniels to not need Murray to overextend his defense, and they can kind of protect his lack of that right now, which as far as how he played in Atlanta. And then I think this guy's going to be on everybody's list this summer. You've already heard him with multiple teams as they've gotten eliminated, but Lauri Markkanen would be an incredible fit with Zion, I think. Not so much of a creator per se, but maybe you get a little bit of a cheaper guard, get rid of CJ and Ingram, and then backfill with Markkanen. And that would be a pretty drastic summer, like you're saying, but Markkanen as a guy who can set screens for Zion, who can come off of screens off ball and bend the defense that way while Zion works on the ball, still has size and kind of keeps that defensive integrity intact for them, could maybe play some center in some lineups. I think he'd be really good. So those two, Murray and Markkanen, might be my top two theoretical targets for this team heading into the offseason based on what we know now.
Markkanen and like Tyus Jones would be like a vibe. Like sure. That, if that's like the way you reset, it's just like I would,
and some cheap center.
Yeah, and just you get someone on the market and you figure it out.